Hi, Dawson County Junior High. My name is Natalie Flanagan, and I am the ESOL lead teacher for our school. My role in this school is to support our English language learners. They see me for a class every single day where I help them with their classes and with their English language learning. I'm also here to support you in the classroom. So if you have issues with a student, I'm not sure what to do with them, or you need help with modifications or accommodations, you can always come to me and I can help you. If you need to meet with me or talk with me, my room is C13. My extension is 1890, and you can also email me at nflanagan@dawson.k12.ga.us. The purpose of this training is to introduce you to the WIDA can-do descriptors and the English language development standards. Throughout this presentation, we'll talk about an overview of language versus content, language variations, performance definitions, can-do descriptors, the English language development standards and model performance indicators, access for ELLs, and then I'll share a few resources for you as teachers. All right, so states are required to have content standards and assessments. So we're all familiar with Georgia milestones, and that is an assessment of the Georgia Standards of Excellence. For English language learners, they take a test called Access for ELLs, and that tests their language proficiency. And they are tested on their knowledge of the WIDA English language development standards. So language proficiency involves the language associated with the content areas, whereas content knowledge reflects the declarative and procedural knowledge associated with the content. So for English language development, it is a process to acquire a new language. It's flexible, fluid, and ongoing. We are always continually learning new words and new things about our language, as are people who are learning it as a second language. It is never complete whenever someone is learning a second language or any language. For English language proficiency, that is where the access for ELLs comes in, and we'll talk about that more in just a few minutes. So that is an assessment that is a specific point in time. Our students test around January or February, depending on our testing calendar for each year. And it tells us at that moment in time what is their English language proficiency. And they can be at a 1 all the way up to a 6. A 1 is generally a newcomer, and a 6 means someone is very proficient in the language. So for your English language development standards, they include the language acquisition process. The language level reflects stages of second language acquisition and represents social and academic context. Then for state content, we have academic achievement, content-based, reflects conceptual development, and represents school academic curriculum. So all of these factors and all of these types of language, so the foundational language of home and community, as well as language of music, language of math, language of science, language of social studies, language of language arts, and language of computer science, they all pour into a child's general academic language for knowing, thinking, reading, writing, and visualizing. So every child is different. The performance definitions or proficiency levels, so when a student is, you're told they score a 1 to a 6 on their access test, this is what that means. So we have 1 is entering, 2 is beginning, 3 is developing, 4 is expanding, 5 is bridging, and 6 is reaching. So if you're told that a student in your class scores a 2.5 on their access test, you would want to go to the 2 for beginning and see what exactly they are able to accomplish in your classroom based on their language development. All right, so the can-do descriptors, these provide teachers with information on the language students are able to understand and produce in the classroom. You're able to access these by going to Teach and Can-Do Descriptors on the WIDA website. And then you scroll down to the bottom and you can see different hyperlinks for the grade clusters. If you are a teacher of an ELL in our building right now, I have provided these can-do descriptors to you, and it breaks down each language domain, and they get a score for each of those, which we'll talk about in a little bit in more detail. But that should inform your instruction as you are looking at what a student can do. So if they score a 1 in listening, you know that you're going to have to modify how you communicate with that student because they probably can't understand a lot of what you're saying. Versus if they scored a 5 in writing, you know that if that's out of 6 points, that student is able to probably write very similarly to their peers. All right, so the Access for ELLs 2.0, that's the test I just mentioned that students take for their English language proficiency. We mostly look at the 4 language domains. So if you look at this student, they scored a 4.0 for listening, so they're pretty well on their way with that. For speaking, they scored a 2.2. That shows that that's somewhere they struggle. And then reading and writing was a 3.4 and a 3.5. So we see they are kind of in the middle for those two. The student's overall score of a 3.4 is also kind of in the middle. So if you're looking at the WIDA can-do descriptors, you'll be able to see that this student would fall in that middle category, and you would want to inform your instruction based on that. So here is an example of the student's can-do. So a 4.0 for listening. They can identify main ideas and details of oral discourse, complete content-related tasks, so on and so forth. For speaking, a 2.2, they can convey content through high-frequency words or phrases, state big main ideas of classroom conversation. So things like that. Those are examples. For reading, a 3.4, they can identify topic, sentence, and main ideas and details. And then writing, an example for that one is for 3.5, they can produce short paragraphs with main ideas and some details. Okay, the English language development standards. So we have social and instructional language, and then the language of language arts, the language of mathematics, the language of science, and the language of social studies. So when a student takes the Access for ELLs, they are not being scored and tested on, do they know the language just of language arts? It's for all of their content areas. So listening, process, understand, interpret, and evaluate spoken language in a variety of situations. This is what it's looking for. Speaking, engage in oral communication in a variety of situations for a variety of purposes and audiences. Reading, process, understand, interpret, and evaluate written language, symbols, and text with understanding and fluency. In writing, engage in written communication in a variety of situations for a variety of purposes and audiences. So there's 4 language domains. So the 2 that are active are writing and speaking. Students are speaking or writing, so they're giving you a product almost that is actively visible. For listening and reading, those are receptive. So students are receiving information from you or from a text with listening and reading. So the Model Performance Indicators, also known as MPIs, consist of 3 elements: the language function, how students use language to describe proficiency; the content stem or example topic specifies context for language instruction; and then support. What kind of support should they receive with this? So sensory, graphic, or interactive resources embedded in instruction and assessment to help the student construct meaning from language and content. So if a student scores a 2, your MPI for listening for that would be match needed resources or supplies with types of activities from pictures and oral statements like calculators and math books. So for this model performance indicator, you can see the language function is follow oral directions. The content is to design area maps. And then the instructional support is using manipulatives and illustrated examples in small groups. Okay, here's another one for a level 1. State how energy transfers using visual supports. So state is your language function. How energy transfers is your content. And then using visual supports is your instructional support for that student. So another example, state how to multiply 2 one-digit numbers is your content. And then using visual supports is your instructional support. Here are some support examples you can provide for your students based on their levels. Sensory supports, real-life objects, manipulatives, pictures and photographs, illustrations, diagrams, and drawings, magazines and newspapers, physical activities, videos and films, broadcast, models, and figures. For graphic supports, charts, graphic organizers, tables, graphs, timelines, and number lines, and interactive supports in pairs or partners, in triads or small groups, in a whole group, using cooperative group structures, with the internet, websites, or software programs, in the native language, and with mentors. But you can also access the English Language Development Standards on the WIDA website under Teach. And I will post this PowerPoint to our Google Drive and have Jessica put it on our Schoology for you to access. But you can get to these hyperlinks if you have access to the PowerPoint. You can go to the WIDA website to get all kinds of different resources. And if you have something in particular that you're looking for, I'd be happy to help you with that. Okay, some resources for you. So I have people come to me all the time and say, I don't know how to change this so that a student can do this assignment, or I need help translating something, so on and so forth. So I'm going to give you some really good tools for different scenarios you might encounter in your classroom. The first and most important is Language Line. I will place copies of the Language Line quick reference guide in the mailroom for you to take. The Language Line is our interpreter company that we use. It gives you very explicit instructions on this page for how to use it, but I will just explain it to you to make it easier for you. So usually I just call the phone number, the 866 number on the paper. If the parent is with me in the room, then the Language Line interpreter is able to just interpret for you directly on speakerphone. If you are trying to call a parent, Language Line will actually call the parent for you. You just need to have the phone number and the parent's name ready to go. When you first call, before you get into any of that, it's going to ask you for your 6-digit client ID that is listed on the paper. You press 1 for Spanish or 2 for other languages. Generally, we don't have to use other languages at our school. Then you are going to be asked for your access code. That's at the bottom of the page. For DCJHS, it is 109. And then you will tell the interpreter why you're calling. They'll ask if you have the person with you or if they need you to call, or if you need them to call. And that's all you do. It's super simple. If you need help with this, please let me know and I'll be happy to help you. So modifications versus accommodations. So you do have to modify assignments for ESOL students. That's just part of what they need and how to meet them where they are sometimes. So a modification is a change in what the student is taught or expected to learn and alters the curriculum. So it might be fewer questions, a lower level text, an alternative project, an adjusted curriculum, shortened assignments, or adjusted grading scale. And these are helpful to especially the level 1s and level 2 students, because if they're just learning English, it can be very, very overwhelming to be given a 30-question test. If you could pick out, the 10 most important questions and just give them that would show you that they know the standard. That is going to be much more effective for them as far as their stress level and having time to translate and that kind of stuff. So that's just, one suggestion for how to help them. An accommodation is a change in how the students will learn the same materials as their peers and alters the environment. So this is mostly where our testing accommodations come in. So breaks, large print, additional time, small group setting, assistive technology, preferential seating. So if you have an ELL student in your class, I have provided you the accommodations for their testing. So you'll just want to refer to that to know which accommodations you should be providing for them. Again, if you need help or have questions, please let me know. Also, whenever you're able to access the PowerPoint, you will want to go to these two websites. Coloring Colorado has just an abundance of resources for ESOL and ELL. They have charts with cognates for students, so words that are very, very similar or spelled exactly the same and mean the same in English and Spanish. They have resources for how to teach different things for different content areas. Just the website is massive. If you're looking for it for an ESOL student, you can probably find it there. Also, there is a Georgia Department of Education Padlet for ESOL, and it has some really awesome resources, especially something that's hard to teach with EOLs with math, and they have a ton of math resources on there for you. The next thing is the Google Translate extension. So this is a really, really awesome tool to have. So if you go to the Chrome store and you look up extensions, they have different translation extensions, but the Google Translate one works really, really well. So once you add it to your extensions, if you click on it, it is going to give you a couple of options. It will either allow you to copy and paste a word or a phrase into a little text box, and it will translate that word or phrase for you without having to go to the Google Translate website. Or you can tell it to translate an entire website or web page for you. And this is helpful if you are reading an article online or something like that. You can translate it and then just print it off or copy and paste it, into a document for your student. The only thing it doesn't do, it does not translate PDF, so it has to be an actual website that you're using. Another tool that you can use is to go into Google Docs. And if you go to Tools and Translate Document, you can actually click on there, and then it will make a copy of the document you already have in English. And you can choose from many, many languages, and it will actually create a copy of that document and make it in the language that you choose. And this is what that screen looks like. So translated copy of, and this was a practice document that I did a screenshot for. And then you would choose Spanish or whatever language you need, and it would make it for you. And that is all. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.